The title of this homily is A Time to Build Up and a Time to Dance. It's the first Sunday of Advent, November 29th, 2020. It's also the first day after my 75th birthday. So I have now gotten to the status of crone. So this is my first homily after that significant birthday. Advent is the beginning of the church year. The first Sunday is the Sunday of Hope. The next three being peace, joy, and finally love. So we lit this first candle of Advent, the candle of hope. Last Sunday was Christ the King Sunday, where the Christian community points forward to a time when all the earth and all its inhabitants will be taken again and finally into incomprehensible and everlasting love. But we are not there yet. We are in a time of waiting. This is what the scriptures of the first Sunday of Advent point to. The prophet Isaiah, in the 6th century before the birth of the baby Jesus, said this: "Oh, that you would tear open the heavens and come down, so that the mountains would quake in your presence, as when the fire kindles brushwood, and the fire causes water to boil, to make your name known to your adversaries, so that all the nations might tremble in your presence." Psalm 80 reiterates this theme of waiting and hoping. "Restore us, O Lord of hosts. Let your face shine, that we may be saved. But let your hand be upon the one at your right hand, the one whom you made strong for yourself. Then we will never turn back from you. Give us life, and we will call on your name. Restore us, O Lord of hosts. Let your face shine, that we may be saved." And then lastly, the Gospel of Mark proclaims, "But about that day, our hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. But about that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Be aware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come." This is a common thread in both the Hebrew and Christian scriptures, looking at the state of the world and hoping somehow, somewhere, there will be a reckoning, a rightening, where hope is greater than despair, love is greater than hate, rebirth is stronger than death. And today, as we celebrate the beginning of Advent with a message of hope, this lit candle reminds us. Yet instead of a God of thunder and lightning or force, surrounded by warrior angels smiting those who have earned God's wrath and welcoming the beloved from all corners of the earth, we are anticipating the birth of a small child whose parents are peasants, who is born in the little town of Bethlehem. The only ones present, the unkempt and socially insignificant shepherds coming in from the fields in the Gospel of Luke. And in Matthew, the wise men from another land far away, with their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. No one else really noticed. The Roman Empire was still in power. The Jews were under the Roman law. And life seemed to go on the same way it had before the lowly birth of the little baby that the parents named Jesus. I found a poem written by Luke Sherman, another clergy person, written for this first Sunday of the new church year, that captures the dynamic tension of this yearly awakening in the midst of darkness and despair. This is the season we are in need of most, at the moment. For now is at last the time when hope seeps in and sticks out like an unmatched sock. This is when our theology can be found in its purest form, for it is preached not as a fact or stat or system, but instead as its true identity, metaphor, art, narrative, and poetry, and prophecy of the coming Savior, the one who restores and turns all our tragic stories into songs of redemption. And when hatred, violence, and oppression are seemingly the only things that are tangible in this world, hope yet steps in as a most welcome guest, as a considerate concept, an abstract thought, still finding its form, as a familiarity we will have yet to meet. And yet we know in our deepest fibers that this is not some unfounded hypothesis. Hope is not something we merely long for, a hypothetical idea that has the potential to plot twist. Hope is instead a stronghold. Hope is real and living, breathing life into our next day, sustaining us in our brokenness, greeting our despair with a knowing grin. Hope is more real than the suffering in the world, even if it's much less prominent. And hope is what enables us to long and strive for more than what we have found in front of us. A world where we are all loved and cared for. A world where peace endures and the line is blurred between enemy and brother. A world where joy is at the forefront of our fixtures. This is what hope does. This is what hope promises. This is what hope ignites. Not only are we waiting, cocooned in our common celebrations of Advent and Christmas, the world itself seems to be confronting the same themes. We are in the midst of the COVID pandemic, which will quite assuredly get worse after this holiday season. Over 250,000 people have died. The virus is spiking again. The current administration is still putting its head in the sand and pretending it's just all magically gone away. Our economy is collapsing. Environmental laws have been reversed. The current administration is blocking the transition of power, which will inevitably come on January 20th. Come hell or high water. People are being evicted from their homes. Food bank lines extend for miles. I know a lot about waiting, as I'm sure every one of you has in your own lives. October 3rd, 2001, my 29-year-old son was arrested. He continued to protest his innocence and refused to stop fighting, going through lawyer after lawyer to help launch a vigorous defense. He was finally tried and sentenced without a lawyer, and the judge on his own decided to add more than 6 years to his sentence. In the last 2 decades, I have managed to spend around 120 hours visiting him at great expense, having to fly from another part of the country. So, 7,080 days later, he is due to be released on February 22nd of this coming year, ironically, his 49th birthday. The last few years, he has had 71 roommates, no access to the internet, limited food. Somehow, he managed to hold on to hope. Becoming a legal expert, helping other prisoners, writing poetry and lyrics for songs, short stories, keeping abreast of the world through his small television and reading. There are no words for me to express how proud I am of him, despite the world's summary judgment. For me, his mother, not being able to do anything that resulted in overturning his conviction, even pleading for clemency. In a way, I spent those days in prison with him. Some days I would be overwhelmed with grief and anger, wanting to lash out at the judicial system that was anything but fair. But I, even as his mother, who birthed him, could not totally be consumed by grief while waiting. I could not be frozen in place, paralyzed in this waiting time. My life went on, finding a life partner, moving to the Midwest, beginning our own ministry. And yet, as the 3 readings revealed, I was also always waiting for that day to come 3 months from now. We as a nation, particularly as we identify as people of faith, are also waiting for a new beginning, where we can rebuild what has been lost or attacked the last 4 years. Freeing the children in cages while so many of us are waiting for the baby Jesus to be born while ignoring this egregious anti-gospel act. Developing sane and compassionate immigration procedures, taking down that ridiculous wall between us and Mexico, confronting the virus with facts and firm steps rather than pretending it just has suddenly, magically disappeared, giving the jobless enough living expenses until our economy is rebuilt, reclaiming the environmental protections, healing the rift with other countries. The list is endless. The way is hard, but we remember that little boy born in a small town in Palestine today, 2,000 years ago, with only the shepherds and magi as witnesses. In 3 weeks, we will come together again as a community of faith, both to celebrate yet again his birth, but be ready to continue to take his message of peace and justice into the world in the coming year. I thought that the very well-known turn term from the book of Ecclesiastes by Pete Seeger encapsulates this tension between what is now and has been and what can be. So let us now just listen to turn, turn, turn.
time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to weep, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time of love, a time of hate, a time of peace. I swear it's not too late. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven.
Now, after that beautiful invitation and challenge, and this coming new year, we know it is a time to build up, a time to dance, a time to gather stones together, a time to love, a time of peace, a time to embrace, a time to gain. I swear it's not too late.